Hi, folks. We're going to talk about exchange theory now. It's going to be Chapter 9, Exchange Theory. And I want to tell you a little bit about the development of exchange theory and the principles involved. But before I do that, let me set this stupid board up here. Whiteboard. Okay. Let me just kind of remind you that we see society as a system. A system is a set of interrelated parts. And the question is what is the nature of the relationships among these parts? Structural functionalists say it's cooperation. Conflict theories say it's conflict. Exchange says it's something for something else. Quid pro quo. Something for something else. Quid, Q-U-I-D, P-R-O-Q-U-O. Quid pro quo. Something for something else. Now the difference, sometimes students get confused about the essential difference between structural functionalism and exchange. And here's the difference. Structural functionalism looks at people cooperating together for the good of the system. Okay, there's an overarching goal there. Exchange theory is each institution is saying, what's in it for me? I'll do this for you if you'll do that for me. It's quid pro quo, something for something else. Okay. So we're going to talk about exchange theory. Now, exchange theory, interestingly enough, has its roots in the writing of a guy, a psychologist, named B.F. Skinner. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about his ideas. He was a remarkable guy, came up with some very interesting ideas. And then we'll talk about how they got, how these morphed into a sociological theory. Skinner was a world-class psychologist. I mean, when he was in his prime in the 50s, 40s, and 50s, I mean, everybody knew him, not knew him, but knew of him. He was famous, and he taught at Harvard for a number of years. I think he taught at Harvard all his career. And what Holmes was interested in was behavior modification. Okay, he was a behaviorist. When we talk about Skinner, we say he is a behaviorist. Now, behaviorist is somebody who looks only at behavior, and that sounds, on the surface of it, obvious. But I've got to explain more what that means. Okay, when you look at, just cut it out. Well, good idea. When you look at people's behavior, you're wondering, why do people act a certain way? And some people will say, well, in order to understand a person's behavior, you've got to think about what's going on inside their heads, their cognitive processes. Okay, you've got to focus on cognition. So anytime I say the word cognition, we're talking about thinking. Okay, thinking processes. Skinner, as a behaviorist, emphasized behavior. He said, we can never know what's going on inside a person's head or a dog's head or a pigeon's head. All we can verify is what we see happening, the behavior that we can observe. And so that's where the term behaviorism comes from. They're just looking at behavior. And if you're talking about behavior, one of the things that you want to focus on is how can you modify behavior, or behavior modification. So Skinner did a lot of research on this, and he came up with this notion of a certain kind of conditioning called operant conditioning. An operant is a class of behavior. So if you have a dog and you want to teach your dog to roll over, rolling over is an operant. If you want to teach your dog to shake hands, shaking hands is an operant. If you want to teach him to stop barking, that's, the absence of barking, that's an operant. So an operant is a class of behavior. So he's talking about It'll be a little while. Operant conditions. Got friends coming over. She's all excited. They're going to go swimming. Well, it's 1:36. You got 24 minutes. 24 minutes. Yeah. Operant conditioning, class of behavior, and we're talking about how do you modify that operant? How do you modify behavior? And Skinner focused on two kinds of rewards, okay, that influence behavior, and they are positive rewards, and the second is removal of aversive stimuli, STIMULI. Okay, so let me talk about these two things here. The positive reward. Let me frame this with Skinner's research and the kind of stuff he did. Skinner worked a lot with pigeons, and one of the things he tried to do is, as he said, modify their behavior. And so he developed what came to be called a Skinner box. And what it is just a regular box, and you put the pigeon in it, and it works best if you got a hungry pigeon. Now, let's say you want to teach the pigeon to peck a bar, okay? So you've got a bar in a Skinner box, and you want to teach the pigeon to peck that bar. And he found that positive rewards work. Well, for pigeons, a positive reward would be corn. Pigeons like corn. For little kids, it's M&Ms. For dogs, it's little Smokies. I mean, it's things that they like, okay? So you've got a hungry pigeon, you put him in the Skinner box, you want to teach him to peck a bar, which is an unnatural kind of thing. Well, the pigeon's in there, and by nature, he's hungry. He's looking around for food. And so he's pecking around. By accident, he hits the bar. When he hits the bar, you give him a reward, okay? So in the case of a positive reward, you give him a kernel of corn. And then the pigeon's still hungry, pecking around. By accident, he hits the bar. You give him another kernel of corn. Pecking around. By accident, he hits the bar, another kernel of corn. What Skinner found, and he found this consistently, is that the length of time that elapsed between the pigeon pecking the corn as he gave him rewards got less and less and less. And pretty soon all he's doing is pecking the bar, okay? Now, according to Skinner, this is not cognitive, okay? The pigeon doesn't think, when I peck the bar, they give me the corn, okay? It's not cognitive, okay? But he found that the length of time elapsing gets narrower and narrower, and pretty soon all the pigeon's doing is pecking the bar. Before too long, you don't even have to reward him every time, just every other time, every third time. He continues to peck the bar, seeking the reward, okay? That's the example of a positive reward. Now, removal of aversive stimuli is unpleasant. Something's unpleasant. That's aversive. And aversive stimuli is something that's unpleasant. And you remove it. You take it away. It feels good. So here's my example. Let's say you want to teach a rat to learn to run a maze. So you put the maze on an electric grid. You circulate a current. It's shocking the rat. The rat's running around. He's running around. It's shocking. It's hurting. He's running. When he does what you want him to do, okay, the reward is you turn off the electricity. You remove the aversive stimuli. It feels so good to the rat, okay? So that's removal of aversive stimuli. Now, let me say this. We think a lot of punishment, okay, as being effective in modifying behavior. Skinner studied punishment. He found it not to be an effective modifier of behavior. And here's the reason why. Punishment is done inconsistently. And because it's done inconsistently, it tends not to work. I mean, think of this. When you were a little kid and you were annoying your parents, what do? You keep annoying them, they don't do anything. And all of a sudden you get mad and they explode and they spank you, right? Okay? Well, it's inconsistent. If every time you did something you got punished, if it were consistent, then it probably would work. But it's done in an inconsistent manner. Think of it like this. This is my best example. If every time you drove over the speed limit, you got stopped by a cop, you wouldn't drive over the speed limit. But you drive fast because it pays off, because you only get stopped once every 1,000 times or whatever it is. So it pays to speed, okay? Because it's inconsistent. The punishment is inconsistent. So punishment doesn't work. Removal of aversive stimuli and positive rewards work. All right. Now, all of this stuff is it's not cognitive, okay? And this point was brought home to me by when I learned about this stuff about Skinner from a guy. I was teaching at a little school in Arkansas, University of Central Arkansas. It's not little anymore. It's got about 20,000 kids now, but it used to be about the size of East Central. And there was a guy in the psychology department I became real good friends with. And he was what we call a Skinnerian, okay? He studied Skinner. He liked his ideas. He was a behaviorist, and he taught a class on Skinner. Okay, well, here's what he did, or actually what his students did. He was teaching a class, and about midway through the semester, the students decided they would use what he was teaching them. They'd turn around and use it against their teacher, okay? So they wanted to reward their teacher, and they figured the best way to reward their teacher was to act interested in what he was saying, okay? To act like they cared, to smile, lean forward, nod positively, okay? So Sam comes into the classroom, unbeknownst to all of this stuff. He comes in and he starts his lecture. Well, Sam was a skinny guy, and he wore these glasses, these horn-rimmed glasses. And as he would speak, his glasses would slip down on his face, and of course he'd push them up. And so the students wanted to modify. That was their operant. They wanted to modify that behavior. And so Sam goes in there and he's yakking away, and his glasses slip down. And so he pushes them up. Well, the students had gotten together before class, and they decided that when he pushed the glasses up, they'd give him a positive reward. And so everybody's sitting in there acting kind of bored. Sam's lecturing, his glasses get down on his face. He pushes them up. When he pushes them up, they smile, lean forward, and act interested, okay? Sam keeps lecturing. His glasses on accident slip down. He pushes them up. They smile, lean forward, act interested. By the end of the period, Sam's just doing this. He just keeps pushing his glasses up. He didn't know what was going on, okay? It was not cognitive. Okay, the second day, they go into class, and they're going to work him out of it. So they get him going again, right? He's pushing his glasses up, and then in the middle of the class, somebody coughs or asks a question that's a signal to the rest of the class, and they reverse it. Now, when his hand's up there, they act bored and disinterested. When he puts his hand down, they smile, lean forward, and act interested, giving him a positive reward. By the end of the class, Sam is standing there with his hands to his side. His glasses are on the tip of his nose, okay? Now, here's the thing. Sam has a PhD in psychology. He's a clinician, clinical psychologist. He is a Skinnerian, okay? He studies Skinner stuff. He never knew what they were doing. He never figured it out, okay? It was not cognitive. Okay, well, that's Skinner stuff. There was a colleague of Skinner's at Harvard, and his name was, what was his name? What was his name? George Homans, colleague of Skinner's, sociologist. And he's thinking, okay, here's the deal. You got an experimenter, and you've got the pigeon. And the pigeon does something, the experimenter likes it, he rewards him. In exchange, the pigeon does that again. He rewards him. And he's saying what you have is Skinner's notion of operant conditioning is the basis of the exchange of resources, okay? People see something that they like, they reward it, okay? They do it again, they reward it. It's the basis of social exchange. Now, we will talk, exchange theory is really helpful when you talk about on micro levels of analysis. And when we start talking about dating and mate selection, there's a theory that was developed about 30 years before Skinner came along. But it embodies exchange theory, okay? Exchange theory works on a micro level. So what we're going to do is we'll talk about that some more when we get into that area. But this concludes Skinner. This is chapter 9, and we'll get ready for chapter 10, which is all about Parsons. Talk to you then.